It's being hailed as a big advance in ending the global HIV epidemic. The Food and Drug Administration in the United States has approved an injectable drug that prevents HIV infection. Known under the generic name Luna Capavir, the drug was almost 100% effective at stopping the spread of HIV in large trials. It was developed by the pharmaceutical company Gilead and is administered via 2 injections every year. The World Health Organization has welcomed the approval, saying we're working with partners and national authorities to ensure Luna Capavir reaches people who need it most quickly, safely, and equitably. It's estimated that more than 88 million people have become infected with HIV since the first cases were reported back in 1981. And of those, 42 million people have died from illnesses related to the virus. In 2023, around 40 million people were living with HIV worldwide. Advances in therapies have drastically reduced deaths since the peak around 20 years ago. Chris Byrer has for decades been a leading figure in HIV prevention, treatment, and research. He's currently the director of the Duke Global Health Institute. Chris, pleasure to have you on DW today. Now, the UN wants to see no new cases of HIV by 2030. Currently, we stand at around 1.3 million new annual documented cases. How much closer are we to the UN's goal today?
Well, we were further off than we've been in a while. We were supposed to, by 2025, we were supposed to have fewer than 500,000 new infections a year. So we have missed that target. But in the last 4 months, since the new U.S. administration has come in, many of the programs that were helping us get to that goal have been drastically cut. And so we're really in a new era of crisis in global HIV.
How much closer could Luna Capavir put us to achieving that goal? Maybe later than expected or later than wanted, but could that be an important moment we're witnessing here?
There's no question, lenacapavir, and just so your audience knows, this is a twice-a-year injection. It's given subcutaneously, and it is an antiviral that prevents HIV acquisition. We had 2 big trials, one entirely in sub-Saharan African women and girls, the other in the Americas in gay and bisexual men and trans women. And in both trials, the results were just extraordinary. For women, the efficacy was 100%. And typically, we see lower rates of effectiveness for prevention in women than in men. So this really is a game changer. But the big issue is going to be access, getting it out there to the people who need it. And Gilead, the company which manufactures this drug, has really laid out an ambitious plan for global access, including making available generic manufacture. And they've made voluntary licensing agreements in 6 countries to manufacture this drug for the 120 or so low and middle income countries globally. So they are playing their part, but donors and governments are also going to have to play theirs.
And let's look at lenacapavir a little closer. It's a shot, but it's not a vaccine, is it?
That's correct. No, it is it's what we call a form of pre-exposure prophylaxis, or PrEP. It's the use of an antiviral drug, which also, by the way, it's licensed for treatment. It's very much a long-acting treatment option as well. But this new licensure from these 2 trials allows us to use this antiviral drug, as I said, twice a year, subcutaneous injections. And of course, many vaccines have to be given repeatedly or given as boosters. So in terms of the number of injections, the big difference here is that you're going to have an injection every 6 months for as long as you need the protection. So it's not a vaccine. But it is highly efficacious. And of course, we've never had an HIV vaccine candidate that got anywhere near close to this level of efficacy.
Now, the means of administration aside, how is this different from other prophylactic medicines that are already available?
Well, we have several oral agents for PrEP. Most of those have to be taken every day. And that has been a real challenge for many people. And what you see over time is that adherence, sticking to the regimen and using it as prescribed, goes down for many people, many populations. We have particular challenges, as we've seen among women using these products, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, where the biggest numbers are. And so we've been looking for longer acting agents for some time. There already is one injection that is a preventive injection that's also licensed. That's called cabotegravir, but that's every 2 months. So it's 6 shots a year. This at twice a year may be easier for people to use and may be easier for people to use longer term.
Who is this aimed at mostly?
Well, the first trial, there was both of these trials were supported by Gilead, was the Purpose 1 trial, which was done for young reproductive age adolescent girls and women in sub-Saharan Africa. And the reason for that is that in Africa, you see it's part of the world where there is female predominance. There are more infections in women than there are in men. And we have had a terrible time controlling new infections, reducing the number of new infections in this population. So that was the first group. We really aimed it at women and girls in high burden countries of reproductive age. The second group is the population that also has very high rates of HIV infection, and that is gay and bisexual men, transgender women who have sex with men, and non-binary and genderqueer persons who also have sex with men. And in those populations, oral PrEP has worked more effectively, but it's still a challenge for people to adhere to use it over time. So the second trial was done in sexual and gender minority populations, and it showed just a slightly less, maybe 99% efficacy, as opposed to the trial in women, where there were no infections in women getting the actual drug, as opposed to the placebo controls.
Yeah, that's really impressive. So far, it has only been approved in the US, though. How far are we from approval in other countries?
Well, Gilead has already filed with the World Health Organization, which is very important in other countries. They've also filed with the European Medical, the EMA, and that's very important because they're the other two, along with the FDA, that many countries will look to for their own approvals. They've also filed in Brazil and South Africa, very important countries. And the generic manufacturer, the licensing agreements that they've made, that's going to take a couple of years to get up to speed and to get to scale. But the goal is that they are hoping to have generic, low-cost generic manufacture available within about 3 years. And that could reach up to 2 million people. So there really is the potential for wide use of this drug. But again, it's going to require governments to include it in their national plans. It's going to require donors supporting this for the lowest income countries, where just even the program costs will be a challenge, much less the drug costs.
Do you see that happening? Because right now we're at a moment where many aid programs supporting HIV care and prevention around the globe are facing tremendous financial troubles.
Absolutely, yes. And it's not just the US. There have been declines from Germany, your country, I'm sorry to say. There have also been declines in the UK. The European donors in general have been less interested in specific HIV funding and have wanted to do more with funding health system reform, health sector reform. So there have been many downward pressures on donor aid for HIV and AIDS. But that said, this is a revolution that may or may not happen. We are really not certain that access is going to be available for all the people who need it and in time to really make a difference. So I would say this is one of the great challenges facing public health right now, is making sure that we use this powerful new tool in ways that could really help us get to the end of this pandemic. And it is in some ways a critical moment really for the field.
Yeah, it's a powerful tool, but it's just one brick in the wall of the prevention of new HIV cases, isn't it?
That's
what
right.
else is needed to, one day completely eradicate HIV/AIDS?
Well, we talked earlier, your first question to me was about the number of new infections every year. We have right now about something like 28 million people worldwide living on HIV therapy, and we keep adding every year over 1 million new infections. So the burden, the prevalence of HIV is continuing to rise, and the number of people who need therapy is continuing to rise. So one approach that some are working on, scientists, but also donors like the Gates Foundation, is looking at simpler and more feasible approaches toward cure, actually curing HIV infection. And ultimately, when you look at viral infections, and HIV is a virus, we have always needed a vaccine. Ultimately, it really does take a vaccine and curative strategy. If we had those two things, we could truly bring this epidemic to an end. As it is, Luna Capavir, hopefully, is going to help us really reduce the number of new infections such that we get some ability to control. But you have to remember that all of these people who've been recently infected and will have been infected in the last several years, if they have access to antiviral therapy, can have long, healthy lives up to now about 72 years. That's the life expectancy of somebody newly infected with HIV. And so the treatment burdens are going to be there for decades to come. There's no Brexit on HIV.
That's Chris Byer. Thank you so much for your time. Great speaking to you.
Thank you. Good to speak to you.